Hello and welcome to the AOI Masterclasses for the Velocity series by Bybit and Red Bull Racing. In this episode, Rick Oostenbroek, the first artist of the lineup, tells us all the secrets behind creating the momentum collection and the animation flow state. All right, hello everyone. Thank you for being here on a new masterclass of AOI. I'm here with Rick Oostenbroek today. Hi Rick, how are you?
Hello, I'm good. I'm super excited for this week and to reveal the final project.
Let's start actually with the first question. You are the first artist of the Velocity series, which is very, very exciting. And what drew your attention to the project? How did it all started for you?
Um, well, yeah, of course, I'm super humbled to be able to do this. I'm honored to be asked for something where bigger brands get involved. And by default within the space, I'm a bit picky because obviously there are more brands hitting me up like, hey Rick, do this with us, we want to do web3 and blah blah blah. And most of the time they don't really know what's up, or they got the wrong advisors. And of course, like AOI being a collector of mine, and I think we have a relationship for about 2 years already in the space. I had many calls before this project as well, so I was kind of okay when I got asked by them. Maybe it's interesting. And yeah, after several calls, also with the team from Red Bull and the Bybit people, I was like, okay, this, they know what's up, they know it's legit. And then they were like, okay Rick, yeah, we're looking for many unique outputs. I'm like, oh no, how am I gonna do this? Like sometimes a piece of art, to me, like honestly, especially whenever it's on chain, by default I go all over details like endless times. And like, so how to make this happen? But at the same time, it was time for a new challenge. And I've been captivated by the process of generative art, like how that works, especially workflow wise. I find it quite fascinating when you have outputs, but you can actually never go back to that same output once it's gone, right? And that thinking was interesting to me, being like more of a one-of-one artist, and definitely a challenge I wanted to mess with. But again, like there were such big names involved that I was a bit scared, and it's like, okay, I said yes, but like, am I actually able to do this? And most of the time, like those moments, like in the beginning you're scared, but all of a sudden you're like mesmerized with the fact that there are ways of doing this. And yeah, so being like, a Verstappen fan, I would say. I mean, I like Perez too, but I love Verstappen more. Obviously, we share the same favorite number, 33. So I was like, yeah, this is an opportunity like that comes by once in a lifetime. And yeah, just humbled and to do this. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's really great to hear. And so you were saying that, of course, you had to kind of take a new approach to your art
Yeah.
and involve data, which is really important for the Velocity series.
Yeah.
So, what were your first steps? How did you start the whole project, the whole momentum
Well,
collection?
at first, like I was happy that I was in Portugal at that time, so I had lots of time to think about it. Besides taking care of the kid and the pool and blah blah blah, but there were dull moments when the kid was asleep. And um, yeah, I was just thinking about, okay, I've done animation before. I worked a lot with 3D. Like those are the things I looked into, because I knew like within my 3D software you could do whatever. Like you can even add code to it. And I was like, okay, like if you can do that with like a music tune, maybe we can do that with other data as well that's not music. So yeah, I digested like sort of how a perfect lab would be, and plug that data in, into my workflow, and use that as to drive the randomization for the look and feel, which is a whole new thing for me in general, because I'm always the one who takes care of the look and feel, and also the compositions and the colors and where they're placed and where a highlight goes and where a shadow goes. And that's usually like the rig way of doing that, and doing that like 25 times over and over again, and maybe land on an execution I eventually like. But here it was totally different, and like I've been painting a lot lately as well. I've always been, but I picked up on it again, and the sort of analog feel of not having the full control. Because with paint, like, okay, you have the control, you hold the brush, but you don't know how the paint blends into another color up front, right? And within my digital usual workflow, you can totally control that. And that was so interesting. So I really wanted to approach this as another step, to get rid of my perfectionist sort of vibe, which holds me back every now and then. And turn it into an expressive work of art, I would say, where other factors come into play. And that was really refreshing and mesmerizing, but also scary.
Yeah, absolutely. You kind of had to let go of the perfectionism for a second. You're like, okay, I have to let the machine do its job,
Oh,
right?
wow. Yeah, and that was actually surprising. I still remember the first time I saw like my first test. It was during the weekend. I came home from vacation on Wednesday, and I already prepared sort of like what I had in mind and what I wanted to do, and just let it render and do my first like test sequence. Uh like turn the renders on, because they're actually rendered in 3D already. Um so I turned those renders on, and I on Friday, and then on Thursday I was like, okay, I got a spare moment. Let's check up on my PC. So I grabbed my bike to the office. I checked it, and I was like, oh, that's actually quite surprising. And like, it was full of things I wouldn't do by default, and that sort of thing. Like, it was really a dialogue between me and the machine. And from that moment on, I was like, okay, this is the way I want to do it, and this is the way we're going to tackle this. And as a perfectionist, like, you're always so aware of whatever, and it was really refreshing to let go of those like smaller aspects such as composition and whatever. And of course, I could set the boundaries, but still some fuck ups can occur every now and then. And actually, those fuck ups made it really beautiful to me, like almost like an abstract expressionist painting from time to time. And I love that.
Yeah, that's absolutely beautiful. And you were saying that momentum kind of echoes this relationship between the driver and the car,
Yeah.
right? You kind of wanted
Yeah.
to create this sort of spectrum. How did you
Yeah.
navigate that when you were conceptualized work? Did you know already that you were trying to create this sort of concept, this sort of relationship between the driver and the car? Or did you realize it while you were working with the machine that you're like, wow, I'm actually like
Yeah.
re this?
It was really like the same sort of workflow where it's trial and error. Like, I always start with a blank canvas. Like, the only fun thing was that, like, next to the pool in Portugal, I've been already working on some gradients on my iPad. But like, yeah, I sort of had to kick it in a way that I didn't know what I was going to expect. And I also didn't expect myself to enjoy the process as much, I would almost say. But yeah, the relationship between, like, I'm not the biggest AI fan, so like whenever I do Mid Journey or whatever, like, it doesn't really trigger anything in me. Beside that, it could be an interesting, inspirational, whatever mood board vibe. But like with this, it was really different, and I was just mesmerized by the fact, like, what the computer did to my work. And of course, like, like, with AOI, I've done the self collaboration, for instance, where other people took my work and applied their ideas to it. Like, this almost felt similar to me, where I didn't have the full control, but it was still like recognizable Rick. And that was just so cool, and definitely something I'm gonna do in the near future. But the entire concept of the razor, at like the driver, like the human aspect, and the machine, like the machine aspect, and bring that together within a body of work, that was the ultimate goal. But I would never expect that I could pull it off. Actually, so I said yes to this opportunity without knowing that I could actually do it. But that nice feeling of being uncomfortable and being unsure and being insecure makes you do weird stuff. And Like, yeah. It definitely is probably one of my more experimental body of work, but that's also really what I want to do in this space for a long time. And it was just like everything clicked with this opportunity, and that's just rare and doesn't happen every time you do something.
No, that's absolutely great. And so how many outputs did you have at first? Because I remember there's been a part, the curation part has been
Yeah.
quite quite tough. Maybe that was your side, the perfectionist side of
Yeah.
the project, that you could
Yeah.
were able to really carefully choose each piece. So how many outputs did you have at first to get to 200?
I rendered essentially like in one take I did 2100, which was like I did 31 frames per second. I don't know why I did 31. I should have done 33 looking back right now, but anyways, I did yeah, I I did so many that my hard drive was full at some point, and I was like, okay, because I was sending, like, I was working on two machines at the same time, sometimes even three on my iPad. So I was working on four machines, but so I was keep on sending back and forth, and all of a sudden, I even removed my download folder because it was so full, and accidentally I lost tons of my files. But I did 2,100 iterations, or well, the computer did it in a way, and I had to cut that down to 200, and that was the hardest part of all. Literally, like sleepless nights. Like, hey Rick, I fight with this one, and all of a sudden, like I was like, okay, I'm on 270, and I gave it to my girlfriend. And I was like, here, you do it now. And then she did it, and I was like, I went to sleep, and then I woke up the next morning, and I was like, okay, I don't agree with everything she said, so I, I took some back. No, so the entire body of work was like generated, but in the end curated by me, because I also want to pay some sort of homage to my aesthetic, and also like wanted to be the feedback system towards the machine, essentially, like driver machine. Like as a driver, I want to make sure that everything works properly, like to my wishes. And as an engineer, I want to be the driver to be happy. So in the end, it felt nice to sort of do like a hard cut a couple times through this entire collection. But that was hard. Like I've landed on 200 about 5 to 6 times, and I know not everybody was happy with that, or me changing my mind all the time. But yeah, that was my perfectionistic side again. But at some point, you needed to let go, and that was so good. And yeah, like that I was able to do this in general was just like cool. Like I surprised myself.
And speaking about playing an homage to your aesthetic, your usual kind of creative process as well. Let's talk about flow state. Tell
Yeah.
us about how you envisioned it and how it just became reality for the collection.
Well, this goes back a long time. Like I was like my father is pretty fanatic in sports. I grew up doing sports a lot, and I wouldn't say like as a professional, but I was like my father was quite pushy, like not in a very wrong way, but like he cared a lot, and I've been a speed skater, and that's most maybe not the most common sport like globally, but in the Netherlands it's a big thing. So you do in this tight suit, and you have one lap, and like or whatever distance you have to ride, but like there was always this like okay idea before the race, like this super focus, this high concentration you're in. And like for me, it was just me individually, but like I want to nail it. Like I have this in mind. I want to beat my personal record. And that state of focus to be in and visualize the race before it actually happens was really something I've had a couple times during like local championships and such. And I was really like, okay, this is such a like you know the track, right? You know where the corners are. You know whatever can go wrong, whatever can go right. But you always have this perfect like lap or whatever race in your mind, and that state of focus is just like something special. And I can totally imagine like okay, for me it was just me myself, but there are so many people involved into the F1 and the preparation for that. And like I can't really imagine how that is that you're all working on that same goal, like the state of perfection. And perfection doesn't necessarily exist, but this visual kind of wanted to illustrate that perfect state of mind, that perfect base, like that one goal you're all fighting for. And that was like the typical Oostenbroek kind of piece, I would almost say. And yeah, I used one of my gradients to simply loop it in a very elegant way, which I like. And I made it perfectly for screens, so you can use it as either a wallpaper or you can turn it on to your TV and have a very nice visual to play all night long.
That's awesome. This is a perfect time to remind everyone that this is the airdrop for all the Velocity Pass holders. So that's really an amazing artwork that the holders will receive. And why don't you show us a little bit about the creative process, the inspirations behind it?
Let me share my screen. So we first move into Illustrator, I would almost say, to Mr. Gradient himself. So let me take you back first. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, so right now you see tons of gradients. So with those, like, there are no light sources. I have a pretty big fascination for reflections, moving things, and how the world looks on surfaces, which is maybe weird, but like when colors come together, when environments color a surface, like it's just something that triggers me. I also have some, no, wait, I can. Oh, well, never mind. I have some pictures, but like those are the obvious pictures of sunsets with ripples and such. No, so the first process for me, like, it wasn't necessarily that I knew it was gonna work, but I was figuring out, like, okay, what if I create a gradient to fuel this entire idea of mine? Because like I'm at least, like, I can be in charge of that, and I see colors as one of my stronger points in my body of work, and it's also a pretty outspoken point in my body of work, so people can get Rick vibes from good colors, and all the colors always align with my personal taste in life or whatever I see. So I've made tons of those gradients, and tested and digested them all, and the way, like, I kind of like wanted to have the red and the blue present, like the sort of red blue colors, and apparently those are the colors I love myself as well. And I like, let me show you this. Like, I have this painting next to me for a while already, and this was really one of my inspiration sources as well, which is wild, but um, like the spontaneous blend, like the spontaneous things that happen once you put a brush on canvas and blend multiple colors together. That's exactly what I do with the gradient, but the gradient being the colors, but the surface being my 3D object. So once I have gradients, wait a second, let me share a different screen. How can I do that? New share. Yes. Boom. So since I'm pretty much a 3D guy as well, wait a second, I can't. Right? Okay, wait. Can we do it a little bit bigger? Do you see just this screen, Federica?
I see
The donut.
Yeah.
You only see this.
Yeah.
You see it full size?
Yes.
Okay, great. So how I always test my gradients, and that's interesting. Wait, I removed the material for a second, but I'm gonna put it on, and I'm gonna use the gradient as environment. So for instance, I have background one here, which is, wait, a gradient I've made here. Let me find that one. It's this one. So, oh wait, you don't see the other screen no more. Okay, sorry.
No, I only see one every time.
I'm an idiot.
No, no.
No, so you see the gradient here that I've made. Wait a second, let me find it. Like, I got tons of gradients. I got so many gradients. So we go to background one. Where are you? Okay, it's here. Boom. So we import the background one onto the object, and we just see how it would react. So this is the background I actually used for flow state as well. And the way I test my things is by like what happens once the gradient moves. Like, is it still interesting? So how do the colors blend? Is there enough contrast? And you can either do it on a sphere or whatever. And I was like, okay, this one could work. Definitely, you can add some extra contrast. You can enable the background, and I was like, okay, this is nice. But this is after tons of testing. Like, of course, I imported like 40 gradients already, and all of the ones I just shown, like only a couple worked from that. And in the end, I've made about 200 gradients for this alone. So once you take a step further, I simplified the process a little bit to make it more interesting for people. Wait a second. So if we go to my flow state, for instance, with flow state, I made the base is actually a racing track, very much based on the track in Zandvoort, but my own interpretation of it. So it more has like the rig curves and not the steep curves they have. But I thought it would be a nice pun and also, again, a nice blend to also pay homage to my own style in a way. So what I did was I gave it the typical Oostenbroek effect, of course, because that's what I do. And you can see down here that like the only thing driving this is a single gradient, and that gradient is the same one I just shown. And the entire animation is simply done by rotating the gradient. There are no light sources involved, nothing. It's just a gradient moving around an object. So basically, the gradient is the environment, and the object is the object. But I was like, okay, this is super interesting when you can just control everything with one gradient. So what if I make more gradients? And why not? Like, let's try it out. Oh wait, oh, we go too far now, and now my machine already starts to play with me. Okay, so here, what if we create more gradients and we randomize that into we import those all these. Wait a second, here it pops up. So here are like all the gradients imported. And what if we randomize that? Like, what if we randomize the fact that what gradient pops up? So you can see here how every single frame the colors change, right? Like, okay, not always, because you have a specific amount of gradients, and sometimes it does the same after the other, and that's something I can't control, being a creative. Um, so yeah, this is nice, but the fun part actually is that once I go a frame back and okay, like let me go one front first. So I go to front. Now I hope not the same one pops up, by the way. Okay, so I go one frame to the front. Okay, we actually have the gradient from the flow state again. But we had a different gradient before, and is it still the same? No, it's a black and white one. So that means actually that by every single frame, the last frame gets destroyed, like the aesthetics of it. So um, there's no like right now I'm on frame 1687. Right now, I click one further. Okay, it's black and white again, but it's like also the position of the gradient is randomized, by the way, fueled by the data of the track. Actually, by the position velocity setting or data, it's randomized. So this means there's no way back to whatever I do, which is scary, but also a real thing within the generative world. I feel where something is gone, it's gone forever. Like, there's no way to recall that specific state of the artwork you had no more. And I really wanted to challenge myself to work that way for multiple reasons. But again, like also to have the computer to give the computer a more dominant place into my process. So that's nice. But what like okay, yeah, we have a sphere right now with flow state. It's the I would almost say like the typical rig stuff like everybody expects, but like as always, I sort of want to challenge myself a little bit in everything I do to make progress, and progress is important to me. Like self progress, I go to sleep nicely, super satisfied. But what if we do things with the camera? I was like, okay, we can try that, and you already immediately see with me clicking one button that that looks kind of interesting. And what I did, okay, not right in this file right now, but in the file I'm going to next. But it's a super interesting thing, like okay, where like how the camera influences the look and feel, and also adds that bit of pace, but also adds another layer of computer technology that decides how the outcome would look. If I wouldn't do that, like everything would basically wait. Let me move to my next one here in the movement. Like everything would basically look like the typical Rick Oostenbroek stuff, and you have 200 of them. Okay, they look a bit out of control, but and you have 100 of them. Yeah, sorry, the color thing bugged here in this one today. I wanted to show it, but um, like what, and you see how the form constantly changes every single frame. So this is the exact like track I've made and used as object for everything. And the interesting thing about this was that I already found it very intriguing to see it being deformed, like the non-perfect rig stuff. But I was like, okay, if I do 200 iterations of like those sort of clean things, it wouldn't bring me much joy, I would say. Like a couple of them would be nice, but I really want that to randomize and to emphasize the speed and add the data to something else beside the colors and the way the track looks. So I really focused heavily on camera, and why is that I used to be a very big photography fan back in the day, still am thanks to this space. But I was always obsessed with moving, like shooting moving objects and how that would look. But at the same time, a lot of my photography was leaning on reflections, and I was like, okay, what if I can bring all of that together into one and challenge myself? And sometimes stuff looked really odd, and then those are things in the curation that didn't make it. But I was like, okay, almost feeling like I'm that photographer capturing every single moment of this lab right now and only picking out the highlights and the best moments of it. And I mean, some stuff is super out of focus, some stuff is super in focus. But with this, I added this playful way of like that little photographer, like that 12-year-old photographer I used to be, and going on vacation with my the digital camera from my parents, and applied that sentiment to this project really topped it off for me, and came with such like maybe like super refreshing results for me. It's like I know it's a bit harder to digest maybe for everyone, because it's not sharp and it's not crisp and it's not perfect. And the same counts for if I move my camera around. If you see, oh wait a second, can I? Yeah, if you see how imperfect everything is, like hey, that's not Rick, but I feel that brings such a human, like the imperfections bring such a strong point of humanity into art, and we're all not perfect. And again, like that leads back to the dialogue of man versus machine. And I really wanted to emphasize the human aspect by leaving those imperfections in there and letting them be aggressive, expressive, and take part into this nice little dialogue in between the man versus the machine.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing all of this.
It was a lot.
I am I'm so happy that I'm looking at this. It makes so much sense now that I'm even seeing the model that you're moving
Yeah.
around. Oh wow, okay, I see it now. I see it. I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you, like, when it comes to the focus, you were showing before, there's parts where you can focus and there's parts that are more blurred, kind of like literally like a picture.
Yeah.
Were you able to control the focus, or that's also
That's
completely
data
randomized?
driven. That's totally randomized and data driven.
Okay. Okay.
So like no, but you can set the boundaries. So that was a good thing, but it was so much digesting, honestly. Like especially wait a second, like the other, because here all the camera things are locked to randomizations, and here it's more like I can show it out here. Wait a second, let me drag my window down a little bit. It's super interesting how oh yeah, yeah. One more thing. Every time I click, it changes look and feel as well, which is a weird workflow. No, but it's super awesome to have, like, I have my focus point. Like if you have none, let's say it like that. You see there's so much happening here, and I love it. I love everything about it because it's our eyes, it's light, it's reflection, it's speed, it's like capturing things. And I that was really where I started as a little kid with my camera. And I was just like, and actually I was visiting a collector last March, and he was living in this penthouse in a big, like, I wouldn't say where it was, but we were doing that. Like I was again with my iPhone, and my iPhone wasn't that good in long exposure, but I was drawing those, like, almost lines, like you can refer back to my Arca series, for instance, that are dynamic and whatever, but super spontaneous because I couldn't control the lights in the city. Like it was cars moving around, and I was just like moving my camera to make some sort of silly art with it. And yeah, it was funny because ever since, like, that moment is still in my mind. And we were drinking whiskey there, and I brought my family, and yeah, that was such a great moment. And after that, he also sent me those fucking weird photos where he's trying to do the same, and that's just like adorable. Yeah, but yeah, sorry, random story. But yeah, like, I mean, I have so much fun incorporating the camera because the camera is the eye. And like whenever you see, like, life so sharp, it's just like, nah, it's nice, but it adds another layer to the work, and also another human aspect, I would almost say. And that's really what I wanted to capture, both like the human dominance but also the computer dominance, and see how we can work together, and how to highlight that in this body of work. And I think for some, like Red Bull Racing, like, they're perfectionists as well, but they're always battling with, like, those two aspects, machine and man, and how to make perfection happen through that. And that's sort of like what I try to visualize in this drop.
I wanted to ask you as well. I know that in the main collection of Momentum, there's rare traits and more common traits.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about those, and maybe you can show us as well, the difference between the two?
If I can show that, yeah, I need to share another screen. But I can talk about it as well. Basically, I ran so many tests before landing on the final render run, I would say. And I noticed I had favorites, and some colorways were more sensitive than others, I would say. So one colorway was like, let's say if I did 2,000 renders of them, like 500 were good, and but I also had colorways where maybe 20 or 30 were good. So basically, the more rare ones also um, are the more perfect ones, in a sense that they're like really the heroes of their little family. So that's sort of how I decided upon, okay, this colorway. And of course, like I have a commercial background as well. People might know that, but I want to pay homage to the brand as well. So in more colorways, more or less, there are also more Red Bull related colors. But when it comes to rarity, it's like really what worked for me. And I decided to limit the ones that were more fragile, I would say. Um, so yeah, that's how I sort of digested them and went through them, and um, yeah, and in the end curated them as well. So once there was a weaker colorway, I made sure that, because my initial, if you look at this tree, for instance, with the textures right now, my initial pile of textures, like I duplicated tons of them as well, and I had like, what was it? I had like 38 switches, uh, where some gradients that I really liked were duplicated more times to make sure. But this is not the ideal. Like with the coding guy, he just types a number and it's like, oh yeah, okay, fine. But for me, I really had to do handwork to make that stuff happen. And that was just interesting. So I kind of locked them up uh, to make sure that some occurred more often because I knew that they were less fragile. So actually, those were good moments. And as a sport person, you also like to be remembered for the good moments you've done and not for the bad ones.
Absolutely. Um, can we, yeah, we can tell for sure why you had to create this sort of separation between the rare and commons. Why did you have to let us know? We can announce that Momentum will be at Hoka Museum
Woohoo!
for the whole weekend. So super happy about this. How does that make you feel? Because
Oh
last week we posted this
yeah,
clip from this interview from Adobe where you were saying, "Oh, one day I hope my work will be exhibited
yeah.
in the museum,"
No, like
and it's happening.
it's unreal. And also shout out to everyone involved in this project. Like I've never been treated more respectful in my entire journey so far, and it's already 20 years long. But yeah, it's really unreal. And yeah, like I don't really have words for it. And like I want to experience it, but at the same time I'm still that like 14-year-old kid messing around with digital colors and images, and it's just wild like what it brought me. And this definitely is one of the highlights, yeah, of course, that I faced so far. And like to be in a museum, like yeah, like you mentioned, I think Adobe recorded it, what was it, August 2021 or something. So I already was into Web3, but I would still never figure that anything like this would be possible. And yeah, it's a big thing for me, and it's a very big thing to me. And like yeah, no, no one has a clue what it means to this guy. Yeah,
Mhm.
no, yeah, it's special. It's special, and it's yeah, it's wild. And if you would have told me like 5 years ago that digital art would be in a museum, I would be like, hell no. But like now, even me, and it's kind of wild. It's unreal. No, I'm super happy about that, and I'm super proud about that.
Yeah, we're also proud of your hard work for this collection. Honestly, it's so much hard work in the last few months, especially.
Oh
And it's been such a journey, but also very rewarding overall. So
yeah,
so excited to for everyone to really experience the collection, the
yeah.
exhibition, and the airdrop and everything about it.
Yeah. And I have to say, for the first time ever, it's also really a collection that you sort of need to read into. I feel it's not as obvious as the usual work I drop. And
Yeah,
like that's pretty interesting to me. And if people understand it, or are already that far in their thinking, or they're like, oh, what is this guy doing now? But I'm pretty proud of that myself, that I could let go and just experience whatever the computer made for me, and kick it that way, and not be that overthinking guy having sleepless nights over whatever little detail. Like it was a really nice experience. And and like with the video and also with this masterclass, like I hope like people kind of get the sense of like what this means to me personally as well, but also like what my thinking was. And I feel that's pretty important for this drop to highlight.
That's
It's
for
and
sure.
it's not just beautiful images this time. Usually I'm more like, hey, let's create something beautiful. And now there was a lot of thinking involved, and that's super interesting as well.
Yeah, there's something so beautiful to really let go when you make art,
Yeah.
um and really leave that perfectionism behind. It's super hard, and I think all artists are perfectionists to a
Yeah.
level extent, right? But there's something so beautiful when you just create something and you're like, here it is. I did
Yeah.
it, and I'm not overthinking it. And you guys now experience it
Yeah.
and make the meaning that you want out of it,
Yeah.
and just really let it breathe in the world. I think it's
Yeah.
something really, really powerful. How
Exactly
do
that.
you think how do you think your creative processes are gonna change? Like,
Oh yeah, this will become my obsession for sure. It's more or less like a new way of thinking, and instead of thinking in you almost need to think in styles. You need to think in palettes, and not just in one single output. And it's so refreshing to have a collaborator where you can speak with constantly, which is the computer, of course. But like it's a new way of thinking, and I love it. I really love it, and it's a nice new challenge. And as always, like I sort of been educating myself on challenges, and like yeah, if I could do this on chain one day, like fully on chain, it's like this type of 3D aesthetic is possible on chain. Like that would be the ultimate goal. But in the end, like the entire generative thinking and not being able to go back is just mesmerizing, and letting the computer take part in a conversation is mesmerizing as well, because like the computer for now was just a tool for me, to be honest, and right now it becomes a collaborator, and that's really interesting. And like I mentioned, I'm not a mid journey guy, but this technology aspect is really something appealing to me, and almost feels like separate, like blobs of paint blending together, and like okay, I decide the colors, but I don't know what's going to happen, like how they're going to blend, and what the composition is going to look like. And that's just like yeah, it's epic. It's so epic.
you know what I was thinking as well, with, in the last few years, with generative art taking, the scene, and in the at least in the digital art scene, and with AI going on, I think I was just wondering, like, do you think you would have approached this project very differently before, let's say, 3, 4 years ago, when
Yeah.
it comes to,
Yeah.
interacting with the machine? Like, would you have thought about maybe importing data into it, or do you think you've been somehow influenced by this generative
Yeah.
AI
No,
scene?
but by the entire space, like I never been exposed to generative art too much in like my career before this. Like I just had an Instagram feed with beautiful photos that are or images or illustrations I saw every day. But like this body of art, I knew it existed because I have quite some like coding friends, and but to this level that it really creates art, right? Like okay, it's legit art, it's fun art. And like all the snow throws, the Tyler Hobbs is William, I'm a big fan of him is as well. And no, it would have never happened. Like I would I would most likely said like it's not possible within this time frame to create 200 images. So you need to look for someone else. That's what I would have said most like, or I've taken the challenge and did some low effort changes here and there. But no, this is just like this would have never happened without being exposed to the Web3 scene and art blocks, for instance. Like that's just a game changer for me, and I think it should be for more artists, because it really challenges you to think differently, and to not be able to overthink everything constantly. And like okay, I barely add code to this workflow, and I've sort of made it happen. I know it's still a little bit generative light, but for me, it feels like that I'm a generative art pro right now. And no, not at all. But yeah, it's massive. It's really massive, and the process itself was beautiful to get there and to experience that as an artist as well.
Yeah, totally. No, it's just so beautiful to see this sort of influences coming together, and
creating new forms of art as well.
Yeah, and I feel
This
it's
is a really
really
great
the
blend.
beginning. It's really the
Yeah.
beginning for me of a new era of creation. And there are so many things that triggered me within this space already. And it's a blessing to be part of it. And to get such opportunities in this space is something special as well. So thank you guys for that.
Yeah, no, thank you for all of this, and thank you for sharing with us your creative process. It's
Of
been
course.
wonderful. This is,
I hope somebody understands it, what I've done, but
I'm
it's not,
sure.
it's still really basic. So I guess it's easy to digest.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just so beautiful to follow your journey. I feel like you showed us really well how, you went from the first step to the very end, and from conceptualizing the idea to really curating the whole collection.
Yeah.
It's such a big project as well for you.
Oh
And
wow.
yeah, I was so honored today to.
It started with a gradient at the pool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was there in my swimsuit, and or not suit, like my swim shorts, and just like this in the sun.
Are you saying that holidays is where your inspiration comes from?
No, because I came back from holidays and I was stressed, like, oh my god, I gotta do this Red Bull, and I didn't know how to do it. But no, it was yeah. Holidays are good. No, thank you so much for this opportunity.
Of course, thank you so much for spending time and taking the time today to show us
Of course.
everything, to create all of this. And super excited about the drop. Is going to be amazing.
Yeah.
So we will see it on the Thursday, 24th at 3 p.m. UK. So yeah, thank you so much, Rick, again. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we will speak very soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the AOI streams. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a like and subscribe to listen to more stories from the pioneers of the ecosystem.